What I'm about to reveal will fundamentally change how you think about Amazon, Google, Apple, and the future of American capitalism. These companies aren't just successful businesses that provide convenient services, they're economic predators that have systematically destroyed the competitive marketplace, eliminated millions of small businesses, and created a new form of corporate feudalism that's making the American dream impossible for ordinary entrepreneurs and workers. This isn't about being anti-technology or opposing innovation. This is about how three companies have used their massive scale and political influence to rig the economic system in their favor, creating monopolies that would have been illegal under previous generations' antitrust laws, while politicians and regulators look the other way. By the time I'm finished explaining what these tech giants have actually done to American entrepreneurship and economic opportunity, you'll understand why we're witnessing the greatest concentration of economic power in American history and why it represents an existential threat to the economic freedom that built this country. Let me start with Sarah Martinez, who owned a small bookstore in Portland, Oregon for 15 years. The Bookmark Cafe was more than just a business. It was a community gathering place where neighbors met for book clubs, authors held readings, and local artists displayed their work. Sarah employed 8 people, supported local publishers, and contributed to dozens of community organizations. In 2018, Sarah's business was thriving, despite competition from online retailers. Her store had built a loyal customer base that valued the personal service, community events, and curated selection that only a local bookstore could provide. Sarah was planning to expand to a second location and had dreams of passing the business to her daughter. But Amazon had different plans. In late 2018, Amazon opened a bookstore just 2 miles from Sarah's location, selling the same titles at prices that were often below Sarah's wholesale costs. Amazon could afford to lose money on every book sale because their massive size and diverse revenue streams allowed them to subsidize losses in one area with profits from others. Within 18 months, Sarah's revenue had dropped by 60%. She was forced to lay off 6 employees, cancel community events, and eventually close the store entirely. The building that housed the Bookmark Cafe now sits empty. While Amazon's store operates with minimal staff and no community programming, Sarah's story isn't unique. It's been repeated thousands of times across America as Amazon has systematically eliminated independent retailers in sector after sector. But what makes this particularly insidious is that Amazon doesn't need to be profitable in these retail categories. They use predatory pricing to destroy local competition, then often close their own stores once competitors are eliminated, leaving communities with fewer options and no local businesses. This is the reality of how big tech operates. They use their massive scale and cross-subsidization capabilities to destroy competitive markets, eliminate entrepreneurial opportunities, and concentrate economic power in ways that were previously impossible in American capitalism. Amazon's retail dominance represents just one dimension of how big tech is destroying the American dream. The company now controls over 40% of all e-commerce in the United States, giving them unprecedented power over which products Americans can buy and which businesses can succeed. But Amazon's monopoly power extends far beyond just selling products. Amazon Web Services controls over 30% of the cloud computing market, giving Amazon the power to potentially shut down competitors or access their sensitive business data. Amazon's logistics network has become so dominant that even competitors often have no choice but to use Amazon's shipping and warehousing services. This creates what economists call vertical integration on steroids, where one company controls every aspect of a market from production to distribution to sales. Small businesses that want to compete with Amazon often find themselves forced to use Amazon's platforms, pay Amazon's fees, and follow Amazon's rules, essentially becoming sharecroppers in Amazon's economic plantation. Google's monopoly is even more comprehensive and potentially more dangerous because it controls access to information itself. Google processes over 90% of internet searches worldwide, giving the company unprecedented power to determine what information people see and which businesses succeed or fail online. This search monopoly allows Google to favor its own products and services while burying competitors in search results where they'll never be found. Google Shopping, Google Maps, Google Reviews, and dozens of other Google services consistently appear at the top of search results, regardless of whether they provide better value than alternatives. Small businesses that depend on Google search for customers find themselves at the mercy of Google's algorithm changes, which can destroy a business overnight without warning or explanation. Google essentially controls the digital economy's infrastructure, while simultaneously competing with the businesses that depend on that infrastructure. The company has also used its search dominance to expand into dozens of other markets, from mobile operating systems to digital advertising to cloud computing. Each expansion leverages Google's search monopoly to gain unfair advantages over competitors who don't control the basic infrastructure of the internet. Apple's monopoly operates differently but is equally destructive to competitive markets and entrepreneurial opportunity. Through its control of the iOS ecosystem, Apple has created what amounts to a private tax on all digital commerce conducted on iPhones and iPads. Apple's App Store policies require all software developers to pay Apple a 30% commission on all sales and subscriptions, while also giving Apple the power to reject or remove any app for any reason. This creates a situation where innovative entrepreneurs must pay tribute to Apple and follow Apple's rules in order to reach customers, regardless of whether Apple adds any value to the transaction. The App Store Commission effectively operates as a private tax that Apple collects on other people's businesses, generating over $20 billion annually in revenue for Apple, while increasing costs for consumers and reducing profits for entrepreneurs. Small app developers often find their entire profit margins eliminated by Apple's commission, making entrepreneurship in the digital economy increasingly difficult. But the big tech monopoly problem extends beyond just these three companies to include a broader ecosystem of tech giants that have systematically eliminated competition and concentrated economic power. Facebook controls social media, Microsoft dominates business software, and a handful of other companies control most of the digital infrastructure that modern businesses depend on. This concentration has happened remarkably quickly. Most of these companies were either small or didn't exist 20 years ago, but through aggressive acquisitions, predatory pricing, and regulatory capture, they've created market positions that would have been impossible under the antitrust enforcement that characterized American capitalism for most of the 20th century. The acquisition strategies used by big tech companies illustrate perfectly how they eliminate competition before it can threaten their dominance. Facebook has acquired over 80 companies since 2005, including potential competitors like Instagram and WhatsApp that might have challenged Facebook's social media monopoly. Google has acquired over 270 companies, systematically buying potential competitors in search, advertising, mobile technology, and artificial intelligence before they could develop into serious threats. Apple has acquired over 100 companies, often purchasing innovative startups primarily to eliminate them as potential competitors rather than to integrate their technologies. These acquisition strategies aren't about improving products or services. For consumers, they're about eliminating potential challenges to big tech dominance. Internal emails from these companies, revealed through antitrust investigations, show executives explicitly discussing acquisitions as ways to eliminate threats and maintain monopoly positions. But the monopoly problem isn't just about big companies getting bigger, it's about how this concentration of economic power is systematically destroying the entrepreneurial ecosystem that historically made the American dream possible. Traditional American capitalism depended on competitive markets, where entrepreneurs could start small businesses, compete based on merit, and potentially grow into major companies. This system created opportunities for millions of Americans to build wealth, support their families, and contribute to their communities through business ownership. Big tech monopolies have largely eliminated this entrepreneurial pathway by creating market conditions where small businesses cannot compete effectively. The combination of predatory pricing, platform control, and regulatory capture means that most entrepreneurs face insurmountable barriers to entry in technology-related sectors. Even in traditional industries, big tech dominance affects entrepreneurial opportunities because modern businesses depend on digital platforms. Search visibility and online marketing are controlled by big tech monopolies. A local restaurant that can't get found on Google Maps or a small retailer that can't afford Amazon's advertising fees faces competitive disadvantages that have nothing to do with the quality of their products or services. The employment implications of big tech monopolization are equally devastating for ordinary Americans. While these companies employ hundreds of thousands of people directly, they've eliminated millions of jobs by destroying the small and medium-sized businesses that historically provided the majority of American employment. Amazon's retail dominance has eliminated an estimated 2 million retail jobs, while Google's advertising monopoly has destroyed tens of thousands of jobs in traditional media and advertising. Apple's App Store policies have made mobile app development economically unviable for many small developers, eliminating entrepreneurial opportunities for programmers and designers. But beyond direct job losses, big tech monopolization has reduced worker bargaining power by eliminating alternative employers. When a few companies dominate entire industries, workers have fewer options and less leverage to demand better wages and working conditions. This is particularly evident in technology sectors where big tech companies have been caught engaging in illegal wage-fixing conspiracies, agreeing not to recruit each other's employees in order to keep wages artificially low. These practices would be clearly illegal in competitive markets, but they become possible when a few companies control entire industries. The innovation implications of big tech monopolization are perhaps most concerning for America's long-term economic competitiveness. Historically, American technological leadership depended on competitive markets where innovative startups could challenge established companies and bring new technologies to market. Big tech monopolies have largely eliminated this innovation ecosystem by making it economically impossible for startups to compete with established platforms. Innovative entrepreneurs either sell to big tech companies early in their development or find themselves unable to reach customers because big tech controls the distribution channels. This creates what economists call innovation capture, where technological progress becomes concentrated within a few large companies rather than emerging from competitive markets. The result is slower innovation, fewer breakthrough technologies, and reduced American competitiveness in global markets. The political implications of big tech monopolization are equally alarming for American democracy. These companies have amassed unprecedented political influence through lobbying, campaign contributions, and the revolving door between big tech and government agencies. Amazon, Google, and Apple collectively spend over $50 million annually on lobbying, often spending more than entire industries to influence government policy. They've hired thousands of former government officials and regularly place their executives in key regulatory positions, creating conflicts of interest that prevent effective antitrust enforcement. This political influence has allowed big tech companies to avoid the kind of antitrust scrutiny that broke up monopolies in previous eras. Despite clear evidence of monopolistic behavior, government enforcement actions have been minimal and largely ineffective. But the cultural impact of big tech monopolization may be the most profound and lasting damage to American society. The concentration of economic power in a few technology companies has fundamentally altered American values and expectations about capitalism, entrepreneurship, and economic opportunity. Previous generations of Americans grew up believing that hard work, innovation, and good business practices could lead to economic success regardless of family background or existing wealth. This belief motivated millions of immigrants and working-class Americans to start businesses, take entrepreneurial risks, and build the economic dynamism that characterized American capitalism. Big tech monopolization has largely eliminated this entrepreneurial pathway, replacing it with an economic system where success depends primarily on gaining access to platforms controlled by a few giant companies instead of building independent businesses. Aspiring entrepreneurs increasingly focus on creating content for social media platforms, developing apps that pay tribute to Apple, or selling products through Amazon's marketplace. This represents a fundamental shift from entrepreneurial capitalism to what economists call platform feudalism, where economic activity is controlled by a few digital landlords who extract tribute from everyone else's productive work. The international implications of big tech monopolization are also concerning for American economic and political leadership. While American companies currently dominate global technology markets, their monopolistic practices create vulnerabilities that foreign competitors can exploit. Chinese companies backed by government resources and strategic planning, are developing alternative platforms and technologies that could eventually challenge American big tech dominance. If American companies become complacent due to their monopoly positions, they may find themselves displaced by more innovative and competitive international alternatives. The European Union has already begun implementing aggressive antitrust enforcement against American big tech companies, recognizing that these monopolies threaten competitive markets and economic opportunity. Other countries are following suit, potentially reducing American technological influence globally. But what makes big tech monopolization particularly insidious is how it's disguised as innovation and consumer benefit. These companies have successfully marketed their monopoly positions as the natural result of superior products and services rather than anti-competitive practices and regulatory capture. This marketing narrative obscures the reality that many big tech innovations are actually just monopolistic practices rebranded as technological progress. Platform control, data harvesting, and predatory pricing become digital transformation, personalization, and disruption in corporate messaging, designed to distract from monopolistic behavior. The narrative also ignores the enormous hidden costs of big tech monopolization, including reduced innovation, eliminated competition, destroyed entrepreneurial opportunities, and concentrated political power. These costs are diffused across society and difficult to measure, making them easy to ignore in discussions focused on the immediate convenience that big tech services provide. However, there are still opportunities to restore competitive markets, an entrepreneurial opportunity if Americans recognize the threat and demand action from their political leaders. This requires understanding that big tech monopolization isn't inevitable. Technological progress is the result of policy choices that can be changed. Effective antitrust enforcement could break up big tech monopolies, restore competitive markets, and create opportunities for new entrepreneurs to compete based on merit rather than platform access. This might mean separating Amazon's retail business from its logistics and cloud computing operations, breaking Google's search monopoly away from its other business lines, or requiring Apple to allow alternative app stores and payment systems. Supporting small businesses and local entrepreneurs is also crucial for rebuilding the competitive ecosystem that big tech has destroyed. This means choosing independent alternatives when possible, supporting local retailers over Amazon, and using search engines and social media platforms that don't extract tribute from other businesses. But individual consumer choices alone won't solve the systemic problems created by big tech monopolies. Restoring the American dream requires political action to implement policies that prioritize competitive markets over corporate convenience and entrepreneurial opportunity over monopolistic efficiency. This means supporting political candidates who understand the monopoly threat and are willing to implement aggressive antitrust enforcement, regardless of big tech's political influence and lobbying power. It also means demanding transparency about how digital platforms operate and ensuring that government policies support competitive markets rather than entrenched monopolies. Most importantly, it means recognizing that the current trajectory toward greater big tech dominance threatens the fundamental economic principles that made American prosperity possible. The American dream wasn't built by monopolistic corporations extracting tribute from everyone else's work. It was built by competitive markets that rewarded innovation, entrepreneurship, and productive effort. Big tech monopolies represent a return to the kind of economic feudalism that America was founded to escape, where economic opportunity depends on gaining favor with powerful landlords, rather than competing based on merit and value creation. The choice facing Americans is clear: continue allowing big tech monopolies to consolidate economic power and eliminate entrepreneurial opportunities, or demand policies that restore competitive markets and rebuild the economic conditions that make the American dream possible. This isn't about opposing technology or returning to some imaginary past. It's about ensuring that technological progress serves American workers and entrepreneurs rather than a few monopolistic corporations that have rigged the system in their favor. And Amazon, Google, and Apple aren't just successful companies. They're economic predators that have systematically destroyed the competitive marketplace that made American prosperity possible. Their monopoly power threatens not just individual businesses, but the entire economic system that historically provided opportunities for ordinary Americans to build wealth and achieve economic independence. The American dream isn't dead, but it's on life support, strangled by monopolistic practices disguised as innovation and protected by political influence that prevents effective government response. The question is whether Americans will recognize the threat and demand action before big tech consolidation becomes so complete that competitive markets become impossible to restore. Because once the entrepreneurial ecosystem is fully destroyed, rebuilding it may take generations if it's possible at all. Your economic future, your children's opportunities, and the survival of American capitalism itself depend on breaking up big tech monopolies before they complete their transformation of America from a competitive market, the economy, into a feudalistic platform economy controlled by a few digital landlords. The time to act is now, while there's still time to restore the competitive markets that made the American dream possible for previous generations. Because if big tech monopolies continue to grow unchecked, the American dream may become nothing more than a historical curiosity, replaced by a system where economic success requires paying tribute to corporate overlords rather than competing based on merit and innovation.